We often walk through life feeling like passengers in our own bodies. When we look at our family medical history, it's easy to feel a sense of creeping anxiety, a belief that we are trapped by the biology we inherited, drifting along invisible currents we can't control. For decades, science reinforced this idea. We were taught that our DNA is the body's ultimate, unchanging hardware. Think of it like a computer's read-only memory, or ROM. It's the fixed genetic code you inherit from your parents, a permanent blueprint that you supposedly cannot alter. But if our genetic code dictates exactly what happens to us, we run into a biological puzzle. Two people can inherit the exact same genetic predispositions for an illness, yet live completely different lives. One person might face severe health struggles, while the other remains perfectly healthy. If their biological hardware is completely identical, the hardware alone cannot be the whole story. There has to be a hidden system, a biological software actively running the machine and determining how those genes actually express themselves. This is where researcher Bruce Lipton challenges the old dogma that genes are our destiny. His work points to a rapidly growing field called epigenetics, literally translating to above the gene. It's the science of how our environment and our experiences actively control our genetics. This diagram represents how Lipton describes the human genome, like a massive library. Every single DNA strand you inherit is a book, and each of those books contains the specific instructions for a different bodily function. But a library doesn't read itself. The epigenome acts as the active librarian. It wanders the aisles, reacting to environmental signals, and decides exactly which of those genetic books get pulled off the shelf to be read and which ones stay closed forever. Unlike the rigid, permanent hardware of your DNA, this epigenetic software is highly malleable. Your experiences and your environment are constantly telling that librarian how to categorize and read your genetic code, and this happens every single day of your life. Our cellular biology is an ongoing, real-time response to the world around us, constantly rewriting its own instructions as our environment changes. To understand how this rewrite happens, we have to scale all the way down. Lipton argues that a single cell functions almost like a miniature human body. The cell membrane acts exactly like a tiny brain, reading environmental signals and deciding how the entire cell needs to respond. When the cell membrane reads these incoming signals, it is forced to make a binary choice. It has two primary, mutually exclusive modes of operation: growth and protection. When a cell senses safety, it defaults to growth mode. This is the state where a cell thrives, absorbs nutrients, multiplies, and dedicates its energy to repairing the body. But the moment that membrane senses danger, it switches into protection mode. Imagine the cell as a tiny castle. Under threat, the little guards immediately pull up the drawbridge. They stop taking in resources, shut down growth entirely, and dedicate every ounce of energy to maintaining their defenses. Pulling up the drawbridge is a highly effective way to survive a short-term crisis. But if a cell gets locked into that defensive state for the long run, it stops replacing its decaying parts. Being stuck in protection mode actively prevents the body from healing and thriving. Here is where human psychology steps in. Our cells are trapped inside our bodies. They can't see the outside world directly. They don't respond to objective reality. They only respond to how our minds subjectively perceive that reality. The lens we use to interpret danger is heavily programmed by our subconscious mind, and that programming is almost entirely built during the raw, vulnerable experiences of our early childhood, when our brains absorb every interaction like a sponge. This visualization shows the physical cost of a traumatized mind. If a child experiences neglect or is constantly told they aren't safe, they develop a deeply anxious perception of the world. As an adult, that chronic worry forces the cells to perceive a constant threat, even if sitting quietly in a safe room. When the mind believes it is under attack, the drawbridge stays up permanently. The body begins starving itself, cannibalizing resources normally meant for the immune system and cellular repair, just to fight an invisible war. It becomes clear why chronic stress takes such a toll. Many of the physical illnesses people endure are the literal, biological manifestation of raw, unhealed emotional beliefs, keeping their cellular system in a perpetual lockdown. Yet, this exact mechanism is what gives us incredible agency. Because our beliefs are what write the epigenetic software, we have the active power to debug and rewrite our own internal code. It takes deliberate effort to turn that giant ship around. Shifting those toxic subconscious programs requires practical tools, mindfulness practices, hypnosis, or building deep self-awareness to recognize when an old childhood fear is driving the machine. When the mind signals true safety, the cellular drawbridges drop. Energy formerly reserved for high-alert defense is redirected into protein synthesis and nutrient absorption, re-triggering the body's natural repair cycle. We aren't passive victims of our biology, we are conscious participants. By doing the difficult work to change our minds, we can literally heal our bodies. Lipton observes that the same logic of survival and cooperation at the microscopic level scales upward. He calls this fractal evolution, the idea that patterns found in a single cell repeat at every level of biological organization. Just as 50 trillion cells cooperate to make one human body, individuals form the building blocks of larger social organisms. Communities, nations, and civilizations are higher-order clusters of these cellular patterns. If a critical mass shifts their biology from fear to cooperation, the aggregate behavior of our entire species begins to reflect that change. Our collective future isn't decided by a fixed genetic script. It is shaped by the environment we create and the signals we choose to send to ourselves every day.